We're rolling. All right. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna play this if I can find it here. We'll go here, and we're gonna go like this. And we have 30 seconds from when that starts. Quick. All right. So, all right, we are back, and I would like to welcome you back to Inland Northwest Native News. I'm your host, Jeff Ferguson, and we are live December 1st. This is the second time that we've done this, and we kind of want to get some feedback from you as far as what some of the topics that we should be covering. There's a handful of things we want to cover today, but the kind of idea is to do something specifically for you that can kind of give you a little bit of hope and keep you going, not only through this pandemic, but pretty much through everything else. Here in the Inland Northwest, we've had this big gap that has gone, well, for decades. That news that's happened here that has gone um, just unnoticed, really, if you think about it, compared to all of the stories and headlines that you see from the coastal tribes, Southwest tribes, Plains tribes, First Nations of Canada, all these other tribes out there, but we have 11 tribes here in the Inland Northwest that we'd like to serve that are doing wonderful things and always have been. And we have the opportunity with the technology. We have the technology with the technology today to do some good things, and that's what this is all about. So, with that being said, we're going to try to do our best to bring you a live show 2 to 3 times a week. My co-host here, Margot Hill, is kind enough to do some research for us and come up with some stories. We're going to be covering news and events on a local level, a regional level, and a national level. And we want to invite you to join us, and we'd like to get your input from you too. So with that being said, how you doing this morning, Margot?
Good morning. Good morning. Gesquokslacht. Sluchlacht. Good morning, friends. We're excited to come and visit with you. I'm Jeff's co-host, Margot Hill, and we're just going to bring you a little bit of news from Indian country. Thanks for joining us.
All right, so we have a lot of things that have been going through our mind. It isn't just up until the last couple of years we've been able to do live streams. Indian country has really been left to things like newsprint, radio, a couple of TV shows here. Well, probably more than a couple of them nationwide, but there's just not a lot of mainstream media out there, and we kind of wanted to get the ball rolling with something along this lines. And doggone it, I kept thinking, if Anderson Cooper can do a show every day, if Bryant Gumbel can get up for 30 years every day and do a show, why can't we have a native show every morning? And I don't know if we're going to do it every morning, but that's why we want to hear from you. If you have any comments, leave them in the comment section. If you are having any technical difficulties, be sure to let us know. We do have a live feed so we can see what's going on. We would like to invite you to send us some news stories, whether it's something that's here in the Inland North with one of the tribes here, or if it's something regionally or nationally or even globally. Indigenous people, they're everywhere. There's always something going on with them. If you look around or you hear something that you think is really cool and you'd like us to highlight, be sure to send that. You can email it to us if you want. You can get on our Facebook page. There's a lot of different things out there that we'd really like to be able to cover.
Jeff and I, we travel throughout the Northwest. We go to conferences, whether it's gaming or cultural events. So we'd like to hear from you. We're happy to, come out and visit. We interview tribal elders, art, culture. We work with a lot of different folks. So we're excited to tell your story. We've had a couple of folks reach out and let us know that they would be interested in telling their story. And we want to hear from the heart of Indian country. All of you are the story. and we want to come and visit with you and tell your story. So if it's a cultural event, if it's a community event, please just let us know, and we'll come out and visit you. We've been to the Indian Horse Relay. We've been to powwows in Montana, tribal elders across the region. So let us know, and we'll come see you.
Yeah, we've had the opportunity to interview a lot of different people, and some of the stuff we posted up on the episodes. You know, we got episode 11 coming out. Did an interview with Ryan Abe, a local filmmaker here in the Inland Northwest, who did a film, and we'll be posting that. But we also had the opportunity to go out and literally interview some literal living legends. You know, a couple years back, we got to spend some time with Johnny R. Lee. Went up to Kalispell Res and we're able to sit down with him for a while. We'd like to be sharing some of that stuff. And then last year, it was a little over a year ago, October, actually, I got to go out and interview. This was for kind of an unrelated project to this, but I got to go out and interview Chuck Trimble. You know, Chuck Trimble, he was just a massive force in media in Indian country for 30 years. I don't know how many books he wrote, and I don't know how many native newspapers he got going, but he was out there writing stories about things that were happening in Indian country for a long time. And so that was really an honor. So it's people like that that we want to be able to share with you, to not only kind of share the information, but we want to inspire young natives too. We want to be able to let them know that their voices matter, that their stories matter. You know, for me, there was the story of the kids out at March Point. You know, that was something that happened, gosh, it's probably been about 15 years ago. Some kids out at March Point got a hold of a video camera and told their story about the battle that they have about saving their indigenous foods over there. And they actually got invited to Washington, D.C., and that was really inspiring for me. So that was kind of one of the stories that kind of got us going. But anyhow, if you have any questions or comments, again, feel free. If you'd like to be notified every time we are doing a live feed, be sure to like and subscribe, or if you want to be updated when we put up full episodes, that'll just be sure to click the like and subscribe buttons down on the bottom of the YouTube channel. So that being said, we have a handful of different stories here that we want to cover today. We're going to try and keep each one of these live feeds somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes, depending on what you think. You know, that's another thing that we kind of wanted to decide. We haven't yet decided whether we're going to be going like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, if we're going to be doing Tuesday, Thursdays, if we only want to come in bright and early Sunday morning, or what have you. We're not really sure. So be sure to let us know. We'd love to hear when you think would be the best time for us to get up to do these live streams. What do you think?
Yeah, it depends on what our viewers are looking for, but I think we should go ahead and jump into some of our news reports and talk about the material.
All right, so let's start with something that I know that you wanted to talk about that was really cool. It happened here locally, and that's the Peacekeepers. What did you see? What did you think about something like that?
So I thought it was amazing. A lot of our tribal members reported that the Peacekeepers came in. They had buses. They gave food distribution at reservations across the Northwest. I know at the Spokane tribe, they were at the Welpinit Powwow grounds. It was amazing. The outpouring, the real Indian country, taking care of Indian country, was a powerful connection for our tribes. And when we needed it most, tribal people, we're very social. And so this pandemic has been particularly hard on us. We're used to traveling. We didn't have all of our powwows this summer. So for our brothers and sisters to show up from the Yakama Nation, the Peacekeepers Society, to do that food bank distribution was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I saw that they were lined up. So we had a flyer that they distributed. I thought was pretty cool. A couple things in here. If you'll take note, we had some really good sponsors in here. The Spokane tribe, the Kalispell tribe, Burlington Northern, BNSF. Those guys were in there. We had a lot of support for these people when they came in, and they in turn brought it. They brought truckloads and truckloads of goods. I saw toilet paper and paper towels and food and hand sanitizers and masks and all sorts of things. And I thought it was really kind of a neat thing, It's stories like that are really inspiring, Fortunately, for some people, the pandemic hasn't hit as hard. For some people, it's brought unity. it's been a good motivator for them to get out and do stuff. So I thought that was really cool. Peacekeepers Society, I saw that they had a link on Facebook. It's facebook.com/Peacekeeper Society if you want to check them out. And I think they're still going around. I think they have some other stops that they're going to be doing. But yeah, again, if you have any questions or comments on that, we're going to try to leave the links to the stories that we're doing. We're going to have some up. We're still trying to figure out the software with the streaming, that kind of thing. So when we get the links, we'll be sure to put them in. So check back to the live updates. Those will all be in the live feed section of the YouTube channel. So that being said, I know you had some other things that you want to talk about. There was a couple other things before, because I think you want to talk about stuff on a more of a national level, some bigger picture stuff. A couple things I wanted to touch on real quickly. Down on the Nimipu Reservation, the Nez Perce Tourism Native Entrepreneur opens gift shop with CDFI support after pandemic halts tourism business. I thought this was a really cool article I saw on Facebook. We'll leave the link to that. Amidst the pandemic, we have people that are still growing out there and still being able to start new business, new entrepreneurship endeavors. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, and tourism is always a mixed bag, but tribes have really been able to capitalize on the tourism industry. If you look at the Coeur d'Alene Tribal Casino, they've been offering cultural workshops in addition to their regular gaming facilities, resort type facilities. They're making moccasins. Leanne is doing baskets. So it's a whole range of cultural activities to complement the business and gaming enterprise side.
Yeah, we got to see just over the last couple years that tourism at the Coeur d'Alene Reservation really pick up. Leanne Campbell took over that deal, and their culture and heritage preservation part that they have in the casino was really well done. Really nice big Thule mat lodge right there in the casino. She had the basket classes that we had in previous episodes. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, Jeff and I have gone to a couple of sip and paints where we had the opportunity to paint with well-known local artists and getting nationally known, Jeremy Salazar. And so that was an amazing opportunity just to hang out and be able to paint.
Yeah, that was kind of fun. Moving right along, we had an announcement they made the other day in the local newspaper here. They announced that the Bunker Hill was going to consider reopening. Now, if you're not familiar, Bunker Hill is a big mine up in North Idaho that has fed one of the tributaries of Lake Coeur d'Alene. And what it's done over the last, 80 years or so, I think it might have even been a little bit longer than that. They had been mining out there and just dumping their mining wastes into the waterways, and it's actually filled up Lake Coeur d'Alene. The bottom of the lake in Lake Coeur d'Alene is a EPA Superfund cleanup site that the Coeur d'Alene tribe has been fighting to get cleaned up for decades. That was something that happened. That's the headwaters of the Spokane River. I know that we had. Quite a few people that were involved with the cleanup. Can you talk a little bit about what happened with the maybe Howard Funky and what those guys had going over there?
So we had a number of attorneys that worked nationally to clean up a Superfund site. Across our Indian reservations, we are more vulnerable to environmental pollution. We often have federal agencies that help make those decisions. Mining companies come onto the reservation. They mine for different minerals, and often they don't do a good job cleaning up. So tribes are left with these cleanup situations that often get ignored. And so we really try to work with federal agencies like Environmental Protection Agency. EPA has a trust responsibility to help clean up those Superfund sites. And so on reservations across the Northwest, if you're talking about the Spokane Indian Reservation or the Coeur d'Alene tribe, we often have sites that get ignored. And mining companies have shell companies, and they just pull out without cleaning up the mess they made.
I know a couple times over the last decade, they've had other people that came in and wanted to reopen Bunker Hill. This last administration opened up waterways to dump mining waste into, and that's something that could possibly be devastating. They never cleaned up the bottom of Lake Coeur d'Alene, and as a result of that, they've got just sludge down there. You know, they say it's okay as long as you don't disturb it. Well, there's people that are swimming and fishing, and there's fish that live in there. All sorts of things that can disturb that.
And for many years, we had warriors out there, native attorneys like Shannon Work. Shannon was an amazing attorney and fought the battle for 20, 30 years in the inland Northwest, working for the Spokanes and the Coeur d'Alenes. Unfortunately, last year Shannon passed away, and so we're looking for a new generation of lawyers to come out and fight these good fights. We need good tribal folks serving as tribal attorneys.
Yeah, that's hopefully we'll just have to keep an eye on that. Last time it happened, I know that they weighed what the cleanup costs were going to be and the initial startup costs, and they realized it just wasn't something that was going to be feasible when they felt that they would have to be accountable to clean up the mess that they made. But with the waterways open, hopefully this new administration's going to change that back, so it's going to be harder for mining companies to be dumping into our waterways. So anyhow, we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll keep you guys updated. I did want to talk about this before we get into the national scene. Here in Spokane, this is kind of something that was, it was something we had talked about. We had been working on the name change for Fort George Wright Drive out by Spokane Falls Community College. There's, if you don't know, there's a road out there that's named after Colonel George Wright, who was not a real good guy. And all of our native students that went to the community college out there every day for decades, as they're going to school, would have to turn down Fort George Wright Drive in order to go to classes. And that was just one of those things that was compared to. We had, I don't remember who compared it. Somebody compared it to naming, I think it was Pastor Joe from the Life Center Church. We met with him while we're going through this, because Life Center's right off of there. It's like a block off of Fort George Wright Way, or Fort George Wright Drive and Government Way. And we sat down and talked with him to see what their thoughts were when we're sitting down with the city planning department and the Spokane tribe, and trying to get that name changed. And he compared it to naming, how did he say it? Do you remember how he put it?
Yeah, he said, I never thought about it much, but I guess it would be compared to how Jewish people would feel if you named something after Hitler and the Third Reich.
Yeah, that was kind of shocking, really, to hear him say that. I could see how that's pretty easily equatable.
So I do want to mention that the Spokane City Council has scheduled a hearing for December 14th. That's a hearing that will be open to the public. You just have to register for it. Monday, December 14th at 6 p.m., the City Council will be reviewing the recommendation from the Planning Commission, who has recommended to change the name to Wistock's Way, a name put forward by the combined efforts of Northwest tribes, being led by the Spokane tribe, worked with tribal elders, tribal historians, and we are hoping that makes some movement. It's been going on since 1993 or something, so it's been a long haul. Local citizens and grassroots organizations, staged a rally, had letter writing campaigns, so now it's coming before the City Council.
All right, and we're really looking forward to that. Hopefully they'll get that passed, and it'll be on the agenda for them to do and swap over maybe first of the year. That'd be pretty cool. Anyhow, that was just kind of a segue into this next segment on local news here. Over this last weekend, we had in Native American Heritage Month is always really kind of, I don't know, what should we say, kind of a sensitive thing when Thanksgiving comes around. I know some natives have started calling it Takesgiving, Happy Takesgiving. But there was a whole movement just this last year that was going around and pushing towards the removal of certain statues that were honoring people that were involved in genocide. I think there were 3 Columbus statues that were toppled around the country, and those, some of those statues have been up for 100 years or so. And so with that movement, one of the subjects that came up with that was, well, if that's something that's going to happen, if there's no honor in genocide, and we're going to start taking down not only Columbus statues, but I know that there was some movement against General Lee, statues of General Lee. But this one here in town was in Spokane, the Lincoln statue down on the corner of Main Street and Monroe. This last weekend, someone came by and threw a bunch of red paint on it. I'll leave a link to the article in the local newspaper here, but they went and threw a bunch of red paint on it. And this was really, to me, was kind of, I knew what was going on. I knew why they did it. But it's to signify the Dakota 38, But to me, what was really shocking, before I get into that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the media coverage on it. But I want you to talk about what were your thoughts when you heard about the paint that was thrown on the Lincoln statue?
So I know it's real controversial when you talk about historical statues and figures across. I think the Pope just gave a statement that he disagrees that removing some of these statues. Just this morning, the Pope was talking about that he disagrees with the removal of statues, that it's erasing history. Well, a lot of people know that we're not trying to erase history, or folks aren't trying to erase history, but really tell the true story. I teach federal Indian law and some federal Indian history and policy. Many Americans really appreciate Lincoln's legacy and what he did to free slaves. However, for Indian country, it's a different story. It's not all glorious good news. You mentioned the Dakota 38. A lot of our young Native students know the story. It's not taught in curriculum. It's not taught in school districts. But we know the story of the Dakota 38. There's been horse rides to commemorate, that history. And so in Indian country, we know the true story.
And so the reason I brought this up, a few different reasons. I'm just going to read the headline. This was in the Spokesman Review. The red paint was splashed over the Abraham Lincoln statue at Monroe Street in Maine. The vandalism was discovered Thursday morning. That had been Thanksgiving morning they discovered this. Goes on to state, Spokane's Abraham Lincoln statue was one of several monuments that received national attention after being vandalized Thanksgiving Day. Some toppled, some doused with red paint, and others covered with graffiti reading "Land Back." Now, dozens of news outlets across the world published photos of downtown Spokane's vandalized Lincoln statue. And that's a photo of the statue. I'll leave a link to that Spokesman Review article. I'll put that up. I probably won't get it up till a little bit later today, but I'll be sure to leave that up. So when you look at what happened, they're equating this to some of the stuff that's been happening around. The one movement that they talked about was the Land Back campaign. And so this article goes and it talks about the Penn Indigenous Peoples Liberation Network. That's something else, and that's a whole other story. But you can see how this got really big really fast when they started defacing the Lincoln statues. The big part of that as Indigenous people, as Native Americans, when we look at this, when it comes to something like honoring people that have committed genocide, if you look at Columbus, the guy who some claim is responsible for introducing genocide to the Western Hemisphere. If you look at that, and then you look at what's happened, a lot of times we have the backing of the Black Lives Matter from the from other movements. With this particular topic, it's kind of one of those things where if we want to get the statue removed, we're kind of on our own. He was accredited with freeing the slaves. So that's going to be something that we're going to have a hard time getting the Black Lives Matter people on board with, So, again, when we look at being natives in this country, we're less than 2% of the population. So if we want to see that kind of change, we have to enlist all of our non-native allies, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's, pretty much anybody, because we're such a minority. If we want to see that kind of thing done, we're going to try to we need to get the help from anybody and everybody, and we just need them to understand that, again, it's somebody who is the Dakota 38. He's responsible for the largest mass execution, largest mass hanging of anyone in U.S. history. and then there's still statues of him. He's on the $5 bill, you know, he's on the
So-
Lincoln penny.
Yeah. So what Jeff's referencing as far as the Dakota 38 is that there was a uprising in the Dakotas because the tribal people there, they were placed on the reservation, pretty much told don't leave or you'll be taken out. Their lives were threatened, but unfortunately, because of bad, shady deals, often the cattle that was supposed to be delivered, the food rations that were supposed to be delivered, they don't show up. And so the tribal people, they can't leave the reservation, and at that time they couldn't leave the reservation to hunt and feed themselves. They were forced to be on in these reserved areas, and the people were hungry. And so that was the uprising. They escaped. They went and they left the area to go and feed their families. Unfortunately, they were captured and threatened. And actually, it was a larger number than 38. So Lincoln may have saved 40 or 50 of them, but there were 38 Indians that were hung, and people stood around and watched it. So our students know that what the Dakota 38 is, and what a different side of the Lincoln legacy is that there was a mass execution, and American citizens stood around and watched as these Indians were hung for simply just trying to provide food for their family.
For me, as I started the segment out with, we for those of you that don't know, my undergraduate degree is in communications, and we studied a lot of journalism. We studied things like gatekeeping and mass media, the introduction of the information age, and so forth. But anyhow, when we start talking about the Dakota 38, we start talking about the Lincoln statue. The thing that gets me is when the stories we watch these, it's covered by the newspaper, it's covered by our television stations. The reporters on there have no idea. They look on there, we can't figure out why anybody would ever do this to Lincoln. Well, that's because of the generations of history, of inaccurate history that's been taught to the American children, well, since the beginning. They say history is written by the winners. And that holds so true to today. When something like this happens and nobody knows why, well, the majority of people, even the newscasters, don't know why somebody would do this, then you know that there's a segment of our history that's being left out and should be taught to our children. And I know that Washington State, just the past couple of years, has had a big push. We have 29 tribes in Washington that are federally recognized, and they're really pushing to teach the true and accurate history of the Washington State tribes here, and that's really kind of inspiring. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'd like to move on to a little bit of a different story. So good news. Indian country we're making great things happen. Starting tomorrow, December 1st, local Spokane tribal citizen Don Pullen will be starting with the Washington State Patrol as the Eastern Washington Tribal Liaison. This is for the murdered, missing Indigenous women and peoples movement. Jeff, the funding was put forward, and due to the pandemic, the funding was cut. And so the Western Washington tribal liaison, that's Patty Ghost, a former law enforcement official, was hired by the Washington State Patrol to investigate and find folks that go missing, and really assist the police in those efforts and those investigations. So we're excited to say, COVID, the funding was cut, but because of letters sent by local tribes, native state legislatures, that funding was reinstated. And so tomorrow, Don Pullen will be starting to assist law enforcement on finding murdered, missing Indigenous women.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
That's really exciting. We have, and you might want to talk a little bit about this. We have one case here in particular that was picked up. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so a year ago, from summer, we had a Northern Cheyenne citizen, Marlene, who was here in Spokane. She was found in an alley, half clothed, and the issue was there was no investigation. They often write us off as we're addicts or women that really maybe don't deserve an investigation. There was no media coverage. And it's a really sad situation. We have a lot of people that go missing. Often, human traffickers prey on folks that are in foster care. The 70s swoop, we know that a lot of Indians went out of Indian homes and went into white foster care, leaving these young people vulnerable.
What comes to mind when I think about that, because it's not the first time I've heard that. I've heard it over and over. We have thousands of open cases. We have probably close to 400 now since this time last year of missing and murdered Indigenous women cases in the state of Washington. That's astronomical. That's more than one a day. That's really, in a lot of ways, gross. But what comes to mind when we start talking about that is, I always think, I was sitting there watching CNN, and right on the screen before me, there was a hiker, a non-native woman in Hawaii that went missing. She went missing for like 2 weeks. They had hundreds of people out looking for this one woman. And when it comes to Native women, we have thousands of cold cases that no one bothers to look for. We did have some positive things to change that, things like the Savannah Act and getting liaisons for, like, in Washington State, people like Patty Ghosh. And so that's really, it's a step in the right direction. It's a really small, it's kind of chipping away at an iceberg, but it's a step in the right direction. If we can get some momentum with this, if we can keep the funding up, if we can make it part of all states' budget that we have money for that, then that would really help.
And it's national legislatures like Deborah Holland, American Indian, that's representing Indian country, that's helping getting Savannah's Act and Invisible No More passed. People don't pay attention to Indian country, but now that we have two national U.S. Congresswomen, Sharice Davids and Deborah Holland, it really makes a big difference. And so we're getting that legislation passed. So, Jeff, maybe let's take a turn and look at a little bit of a national news. One of the cases that I wanted to talk about a little bit is United States versus Cooley. This is a case that has been picked up, the Ninth Circuit case. The U.S. Supreme Court has granted cert, so they are going to review the case law. This was a situation on the Crow Indian Reservation here in Montana, in southern Montana. And it was a case where tribal law enforcement came upon Josh Cooley, and he was, it was in the middle of the night. And it was very suspect. Truck was parked offside the road in the middle of the night. Tribal law enforcement came upon the situation. The question has to do with search and whether that search will hold up. Tribal criminal jurisdiction is very limited under the Oliphant case, so our law enforcement officers often have limited ability to deal with these non-Indians that come on the reservation. This is a very significant case. In this situation, there was a truck in the middle of the night. Tribal law enforcement came up. There was drugs. There was weapons, and there was a 2-year-old child in the vehicle. So this officer, handled the situation very carefully, questioned the individual. We have a right to detain non-Indian individuals, but there's a question as far as criminal jurisdiction, whether you can search and seize or arrest in all of these situations. So this really has some big implications. We understand Terry stops as to you can stop and detain somebody and frisk them if it's a dangerous situation. Clearly, if there's drugs and weapons and the safety of a 2-year-old child, it's important that tribes have this authority. And it really has big implications for human trafficking.
One of the biggest problems I know when it comes to things like Oliphant is the checkerboarding. When you look at a reservation that has multiple jurisdictions, and you look at people that get stopped in those areas, they don't always, the law enforcement agencies aren't always as cooperative as they could be. And so that hinders prosecution, that can taint evidence, that can do a lot of different things that end up allowing people that in normal society would be doing time to walk free. And especially on reservations, that's something that needs to be changed, especially to help protect. I tend to think of reservations as sanctuaries for Native people, because that's where those are our lands. They're reserved, set aside for us, and they should be safe places for us to go. We shouldn't have to worry about people that exploit those loopholes. And so that makes, like you said, for very dangerous situations. So thank you for bringing that. That's a great story.
Yeah, we reserve those lands for ourselves. Nobody gives us land. But I got to tell you, our tribal law enforcement are highly trained. They go to FLETC, the Federal Law Enforcement Training Academy out in Arcadia, New Mexico. They don't have to take a backseat to anybody. They have skills and knowledge. They are highly trained law enforcement officers. So to treat them as less than other law enforcement is just ridiculous. They are knowledgeable. They are hardworking. A lot of them are military veterans. They've served in our United States Armed Services. And so a big shout out to tribal law enforcement, because they do a lot to protect Indian country. And so this U.S. v. Cooley will be going up to the Supreme Court. We've had a couple of wins at the Supreme Court. So hopefully we'll maintain that, because being able to protect our our tribal citizens is really important. So we'll be looking for that case in a few months from the Supreme Court.
Great. That's a great story. We'll be sure to follow up on that. What else? Anything else you got going?
Yeah, just one last thing. I wanted to mention that there's a film showing of Gather. That's from the Two Feathers Food Sovereignty series. That there's this growing movement by indigenous people to reclaim their spiritual and cultural identities through first foods, our salmon, our roots, our berries. So December 4th at 6:30 p.m., Two Feathers is going to go Facebook Live, and there's a film and panel discussion that's free. So I encourage you to check that out. A lot of tribal communities are looking to be sustainable. They're growing their own crops. They're teaching their young people about their first foods, how to harvest, how to gather. If you're talking about huckleberries up on the Kalispel Reservation, Melody Wynn and different folks, Elizabeth Campbell, your cousin, and teaching these first foods. The Coeur d'Alene tribe with their water potatoes. We are looking back to our first foods to be more sustainable. So we're not looking to the grocery stores for everything we eat.
That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that one with us. I know I always get just inspired when I hear of all the different things, and my cousin, you mentioned, she can just go out and walk and point out all the different things that you can eat, and just to walk along a path and be able to say what this food's for. This can be used as medicine. This is an anti-inflammatory. This is used to fight fevers, or this is just a really good food. So thank you. I appreciate you sharing that story with us. So that being said, we're already at 38 minutes, and we're going to try to keep these under 30 minutes, somewhere between 20 and 30. Again, we'd like to hear your feedback. Would you like to see this on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday? Do you want to see this coming in at 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning? What's the best time? We do want to keep this a morning show. That being said, we do have episode coming up, episode 11 with Ryan Abe, and after that we're going to have episode 12 that'll be posted. So 11 will be up hopefully later today, and 12 hopefully will be edited and up by the end of the week, and that is from Shot Up when we were up in Inchalim, and we got to see Tony Louie, and we got to check out Inchalim Days last year. So that was pretty cool. So that's coming up. We do have a handful of other episodes all in the works right now, so be sure to check those out. Be sure to leave us or send us emails on any stories you'd like us to follow up. And until then, Lem Nemsh, we appreciate you tuning in.
Have a good day, everyone.